Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu, guys. Welcome to the Ummahpreneur live podcast, where I interview Muslim entrepreneurs at the top of their game to talk about mindset, entrepreneurship, lifestyle, and everything else. And today I have with me none other than brother Moez Mahrez. Assalamu alaikum, Moez. How are you today?
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullah, brother Abby. Thank you so much for having me. I'm doing great.
Alhamdulillah, alhamdulillah. The pleasure is all mine. And just to kind of give our listeners a bit of background on what you do and who you are and why I wanted to bring you on. So Brother Moez is the founder and CEO of Halal Investor. And this is actually, the way I discovered him was on Instagram. And I think that's where he's active the most. So definitely check him out on Instagram, Halal Investor. And what he does is, and what Halal Investor do essentially, they provide tools, education, and insight to help people, and Muslims specifically, better manage their finances in an ethical way. They have a website, they have social media pages where they give helpful investment tips, philosophies, insights, and wisdom from investment experts, also while exploring what it means to invest your wealth in a halal and ethical way in our modern day. So it's going to be a really interesting discussion. We're going to talk about investment, about wealth building, and all kinds of topics that I'm sure will be beneficial to all Muslims to listen to, because we know this is extremely important for us right now. How can we grow our wealth as a community while doing so following Islamic principles, right? So bismillah, super excited, brother Moez. Thank you so much, man. Let's dive right into it. Are you ready?
Likewise. Do it.
Let's do it. Bismillah. So let's start right at the beginning, brother. Share with me a little bit about what even inspired you to, start this initiative and become an entrepreneur, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So I actually work right now. And it's kind of anti-entrepreneur right now, but right now I'm kind of a 9-to-5 work, and what I do is I'm an investment analyst. So I've been in the finance industry for a while, and just kind of learning about different things about how our economy works, how the finance industry works, and specifically I kind of honed in on investment analysis because I thought that's where I could, have the most halal career, if you will. Investment analysis is just basically, looking at investment options and deciding whether or not they're a good investment for the long term. And specifically, I focus on stocks. So what I do right now in my day job is I basically research stocks. I write reports on them. I answer questions about stocks for the company that I'm working with. And so what got me thinking about the whole halal investing space is that, there's this huge gap within the Muslim community, regarding the understanding of what a good investment is and how to properly allocate our financial resources. And then at the same time, there's the other side of, what is halal and what is haram? Because, let's face it, our financial system, the global financial system is very riba based. It's very interest based. So it can sometimes feel like everything about it is haram. So, but in fact, that's not true, right? The el-asmar fil umur al-ibaha, in Islam and in the Sharia, the default state of everything is permissibility. So the idea is to look for, start with that concept in mind and avoid what's haram. But there are plenty of opportunities for Muslims to invest their money in a halal way. So that's what got me starting. I started the blog, halalinvestor.net. You guys can check that out. I have some articles there you guys can read about just kind of the basics to getting started, about how to think, time horizon, risk tolerance. These are very important concepts that Muslims need to understand. So it's really just about bridging that gap between understanding, that our deen doesn't discourage growing our wealth, but at the same time, knowing the actual practical world issues of investing and being smart about it at the same time. So it's really about bringing Muslims and elevating them up to that status, because there's this misconception that investing your money in the stock market or investing your money in general is gambling or is like gambling, especially when the word stock market is used. So I'm really just about kind of clarifying those misconceptions and sharing what I've learned so far in my journey.
That's really, really nice. And I love that, you looked at something that you realize is in need and people could definitely benefit from this information. There's a lack of resources available. And you decided, why not provide that myself? And I think that's what entrepreneurship really boils down to. It always boils down to, realizing that there's a certain problem or maybe a certain lack in a certain area of the market and then trying to fill that gap. Now, you specifically decided to focus on Muslims, on serving Muslims, right? And listening to you, it sounds like it was just your natural thought process. But I want to dig a little bit deeper with you and find out why you chose to specifically help Muslims versus just saying, I'm going to create, an investing advice blog or resource for everyone, right? Why specifically Muslims?
Well, there's two reasons for that. First of all, it's a very untapped niche. So it's an unserved market. So that's essentially what it comes down to from a, quote unquote entrepreneurial or business perspective. But in the same spirit, the Muslim community is dear to my heart, has always been a part of my life. And we're always trying to find ways to serve the community. And back in the day, I used to do a lot of volunteer work and whatnot. And I got to a point of realization where it's great to do all this work, fi sabilillah, and help out and that sort of thing. But I feel where Muslims can really make a difference is using their own expertise and in their careers, whether you're a professional and you've got a job and you want to expand and do something within your field to help the community, or you just want to start a brand new business. Essentially, the idea is if you want to serve the community best, I think it's one of the best ways to do that is to contribute with our diverse ways of expertise. So that was my line of thinking, that if I'm going to contribute to the community, I let's kill two birds with one stone, for lack of a better word, and use our skills to help the community.
Inshallah. And I love that. And it's great to see this happening because I'll be honest with you, and I think this is something that we are kind of seeing in our generation. And I know, actually, that's unfair to say. Let me pause there because the older generation, they've pioneered many things. At least myself, I'm in Canada here. So for Muslims in the West, or like I think for you you're in the UK, correct?
No, I'm actually also in Canada.
Oh, you're also in Canada. Amazing. Most of my guests are from the UK, so I always default, oh, you're probably in the UK. Amazing, mashallah. So also from Canada. So you understand this, right? Like you'll see the older generation right there. But I think the difference is for the older generation of Muslims, their focus was how can we instill institutions to keep Islam alive in the West. And so they focused on the community centers. They focused on the mosques, right? On the organizations, the nonprofits, which is amazing, mashallah, and definitely necessary. But I think what we're seeing right now with our generation and what is really beautiful is that we're realizing, okay, now we have that part, but we're lacking tangible resources for, day-to-day life. Right, as Muslim millennials growing up in the West, North America, or even in Europe. And so it's nice to see entrepreneurs like yourself that are, pioneering different initiatives to kind of help fill that gap, mashallah. And I like that you said, why not use our skills to be able to benefit the community, to benefit the ummah? And I think if we can all have that perspective and try to think of ways to do that, we'd be in a much better place. So I love hearing that, mashallah, brother. I want to continue this conversation by asking you what your mission is with Halal Investor, right? So I know we talked about what it is that you do, right? But I want to, again, dive a little bit deeper here and kind of talk about your mission, really, and what is it that you envision for the Muslim ummah and what you hope to bring to these Muslims that follow you.
Yeah, absolutely. So what I envision for Halal Investor is for it to be a resource for people to, or Muslims specifically, to learn how to invest their money in a halal and ethical way, and really just to learn the proper ways and the even just conventional common sense ways to grow their wealth. I believe there is a whole lot of wisdom. Even if you just read the basic investing books, you can gain a whole lot of wisdom and learn from people in the past how they've invested their money and how they've grown it. And we see a lot of communities outside of the Muslim community doing this. And I think it's about time our community starts to gain this collective wisdom on how to properly allocate resources. So I really want to encourage, essentially educate Muslims. That's the main mission of Halal Investor, is to educate Muslims about concepts of halal investing in general. So how to keep your wealth halal and pure. So there's purification concepts and that sort of thing. There's zakat, which is another topic. And then just basic common sense on, how to not make bad decisions with your money, and how to identify what is a good investment. So that's really all it is just educating Muslims about these concepts and making them widespread, so that we can, as a community, have this kind of investment brain to think about the future, because investing is all about withholding current spending to spend in the future. And that's literally all it is, so that you can grow your wealth, so that it can be allocated to something bigger in the future, or to not just pile up your savings, but also to look at what are or identify what are some of the actual good investments for the long term that we can invest in as a community. So, for example, somebody like yourself who's starting this, who's got this Ummahpreneur business, you're likely at one point, I'm not sure if you've done so already, but going to look for investors to grow your business, right? So us as a Muslim community, we need to learn how to look for investors and learn how to encourage each other to invest within the community. And that's really I think it's not even a secret, really. This is what people are doing. And I think our community is lacking this thinking a little bit. We sort of kind of rely too much on, donations and, who's going to donate for, to extend extend this part of the mosque, which is great. But there are many other ways that we can engineer and invest.
100%. And, I completely relate to everything you're saying. And, right now, I think it's not I don't think we have necessarily a lack of wealth in the community, but rather maybe I think the opportunity here is, as you're mentioning, how to utilize that wealth, whether it's to grow it or to also have it circulate in a way where it's consistently growing in ways that benefit everyone, inshallah. So you started Halal Investor now, and this has been going on for how many years? When did you actually get started with this?
I actually just started about a year ago.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, I kind of started blogging a year and a half ago, and then really kind of launched the Instagram page around a year ago, last June, actually.
Amazing. And what is it what was that trigger? Was it that you were at a point where you finished your studies? Were you just, in between two jobs? A lot of people ask when I should start my business, right? So I want to get your perspective on
that. Honestly, it was really, I've been working since 2013. I've graduated since a while, and I've gotten to a point in my career where I think I can add more than simply just doing the 9 to 5. I want to do something extra and add value. It also kind of did coincide with the birth of my first daughter, and
MashaAllah, amazing.
Yeah, so you get this kind of sense of okay, I really want to do more for my family as well. And, it's about time that I kind of, up my game in terms of, just from a self-development point of view. I'm going to be a father, so I have to be on my A game with everything. So I have to be thinking in terms of, okay, where can I add value? And this is something that I honestly want to teach my kids. Always think about where you can add value. I love what you're doing, because I truly, truly believe being an entrepreneur is a very Islamic thing to do. All right. And we see it with many of the Sahaba. Many of them were entrepreneurs. And it's a core value for me. And it's something that I have no doubt in my mind that it's something that's going to end up happening, inshallah, that, I take this path.
Inshallah, definitely. I want to ask you, bro, because a lot of people sometimes, they'll look at, this, they'll listen to this conversation and they'll read about wealth and, financial freedom. And then there's a part of them that feels like, oh, but as Muslims, should we pursue wealth? Should we pursue worldly gain? Isn't the akhirah our abode? And it's like, is there a balance? And does pursuing financial freedom really hinder someone from the pursuit of righteousness? I want to know your opinion on that.
Oh, I'm so glad you asked this question, because this is one of the biggest misconceptions that I think our community has, we have this idea that, you know, we should avoid wealth because wealth is associated with the dunya, and they know themselves. We know ourselves too. And, you know, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the Quran that you as human beings love wealth immensely. So it is natural for us to feel like, okay, we're going to get attached to wealth. So there's this, in our brain, we have this kind of, you know, direct correlation. But with the right mentality, I truly, truly believe, as a believer, how one should be is to train ourselves to look at wealth as a tool more than anything. And not just that, that our wealth, if we have the right conception of wealth in Islam as Muslims, that wealth is not really ours. Any wealth that we have in our bank account or under our mattress or in the stock market, in our investment accounts or our homes, anything that we think we own is not actually ours, but it belongs to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And what that means is that this wealth that's been given to us is an amana. It's a trust that's been placed upon us. So we therefore have a responsibility. So when we start to think about wealth as a responsibility, and we have to allocate these resources as stewards of the ummah, then I think that the mentality really starts to shift and starts to become, okay, I need to gain this wealth so that I can better serve the ummah. And by gaining financial freedom for yourself, personally, there's so many more pros than cons, in my opinion, especially with the right mindset. First of all, yes, it's a good thing to be financially free. Why? Because you can have more time for your family, more time for the ummah, more time for the community, more time to contribute to things that will actually make a difference, more resources to actually make a difference. And it's also, maybe it's not talked about very much, but it's also psychologically beneficial to be financially free because you're less stressed about just making ends meet, right? And that's a very real thing, right? And if we go to the other extreme, poverty is actually a very negative thing in terms of if we're talking about the general masses. Poverty results in a lot of negative things. It results in crime. It results in people despairing of hope. It results in, it has a lot of negative effects, right? Doesn't mean people who are poor are less than others. In fact, the Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam chose to be someone who lived with very little means, right? So it's not necessarily a direct correlation, but it's saying that the effects of poverty are very, very negative on humankind. And that's why we have zakat, right? We give our wealth to those in need so that we can alleviate the negative effects of poverty, and so that people can live generally more positive lives and generally have a better outlook on life and better mental health ultimately. So that's my perspective on wealth. I really think we should, instead of focusing on avoiding wealth and avoiding, talking about it or avoiding the possibility of it being something that you love too much, focus more on, okay, how do I cope with wealth? How do I, train myself to look at wealth in the correct way? Like anything, it's a tool, like many things in this life.
Mm-hmm. Definitely. And I like what you said about it being a tool, because I think the key here is that, there's definitely a way where you can still very much have an active pursuit of wealth, right? And really pursue it earnestly and work on your business. And one of your goals being, we do want to acquire more revenue in our business, and, so we can create more amazing products and services and keep growing and keep serving others. And I think all of it ties together, right? Because when you don't have enough revenue in your business or even income, you can't do as many things as you'd like to do, whether that be even going to Hajj or Umrah with your family, or whether that even may just be something as simple as providing for your family. SubhanAllah, there are in many du'as that the Prophet ﷺ has taught us. There is, one part of the dua will be, Allahumma inni a'udhu bika min al-kufri wal-faqri, right? Oh Allah, I seek your protection from poverty, right? So even the Prophet ﷺ used to seek Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's protection from poverty. So you don't seek protection from something that's good for you, right? You seek protection from something that's not necessarily very good for you. And that's exactly what it means. So subhanAllah, it's definitely, I think, a mindset shift that we need to have. Now, I want to talk about investments a little bit, because you have a really interesting way of, sharing with people, with your followers, and I love that. Whether certain stocks or investment vehicles are halal or haram. And of course, I know you're sharing your opinion simply, and that's really all you can do. But I want to ask you, what do you usually look for when you are evaluating if a specific stock or investment vehicle is halal or haram? Are there certain things that you're kind of looking for to evaluate these things?
Yeah. So broadly speaking, you want to make sure the business itself that you're investing in is not fundamentally doing something that is against our Islamic values.
Mm-hmm.
So common things are a business that makes all of its revenue from interest, such as banks, anything to do with alcohol, casinos, firearms. There's kind of a difference of opinion about that, but generally speaking, it's not something that we encourage, especially because a lot of the companies that manufacture weapons are often actually used against Muslims. So it's kind of, I don't want to say political, but it's kind of the reality of it.
Mm-hmm.
Even though weapons are also a tool, they can be used in both good and bad, right? So there's a conceptual thing there. But generally speaking, you want to avoid companies that fundamentally do something that is against your values as a Muslim. So really, that's what it first comes down to. Now, secondly, there are standards that scholars have established. So alhamdulillah, over the decades, scholars have kind of come together and said, okay, we need to develop some standards if we're going to agree that investing in stocks or investing in global markets is going to be acceptable. Here are the standards. And my opinion on this is that it's still something that is developing, but there are, alhamdulillah, there are standards, and we can kind of we can adopt them, and we can at least use that as a starting point to evaluate whether or not we're comfortable with the investment. So for me, the first thing is the fundamentals, or the actual what the company does. The standards that were established by scholars, the most well-recognized standard is the abbreviation is AOFI, the Accounting and Auditing Organization for Islamic Financial Institutions. I don't think I got that fully right, but I never do. But essentially, that organization, it's a global auditing organization with Muslim scholars, well-renowned Muslim scholars on the boards, and they've come up with standards. So the first one is that no more than 5% of a company's revenues should come from impermissible sources. So, for example, you can have, let's say, what's a random company? I don't know, General Motors. Let's say General Motors, they make cars, right? That's fine. But let's say they have a division that, randomly manufactures alcohol too. And if that becomes more than 5% of their revenue, then the stock itself becomes non-Sharia compliant. Now, for me, it's important to differentiate between Sharia compliant, non-Sharia compliant, and then halal and haram, right? It's important that we look at companies not as black and white, and more as, it's a more on a scale. But generally speaking, you avoid these kind of companies. So 5%, not more than 5% of revenues in impermissible spaces. So generally speaking, it wouldn't be permissible, according to these standards, to invest in a company that has more than 5%. And then you look at the financial ratios of a company. So you look at their debt and their cash. Usually debt and cash is interest-based, especially in the West. So the scholars say is not more than 33% or 30%, depending on which specific standard you follow. But let's say 30% to make it simple, of a company's total value or market cap can be in debt or in cash. The main reason for this is just to reduce the exposure. Excuse me, reduce the exposure to riba, essentially to interest as a percentage of your investment. So if we were to say that no company, like company can't have any interest-bearing debt or any interest-bearing cash, then the universe, the investable universe, would be like 2 stocks maybe. You know, like there wouldn't be enough stocks to choose from. So this was, I think, a way that the scholars used to kind of narrow down the to make it a feasible investable universe for Muslims to invest in. So it's a practical way to approach the stock market. So that, I know that was a bit of a technical breakdown, but I think it's important to know where we're at right now as a community in terms of what standards we use for Sharia compliance and non-Sharia compliance. But at the end of the day, what I sincerely believe is, I get a lot of questions asking me, okay, is this stock halal? Is this stock haram? You know, can I do this? What if it says it's halal on this app and haram on this app? What do I do? So it's really about knowing the standards, in my opinion, and then coming to a decision as to what you're actually comfortable with as a Muslim investing in. And then we just another point that I want to mention is that even though a company can have up to 5% impermissible revenue, that impermissible revenue also needs to be purified. So there are ways to do that, and I talk a little bit about that on my page. It gets a little bit more technical, but essentially you donate a certain portion of your gains or a certain portion of returns that were given to you. That corresponds to how much impermissible income there was, and you donate that to charity. So
interesting. Yeah, it's a really interesting approach, actually. Thank you for sharing that. And I actually learned a lot just from you sharing that. So not too technical, brother. This is exactly what I wanted, mashallah. So I know you probably get, tons of questions. And I'm sure you do, because I'm not even in an investment account. I mean, Ummahpreneur, we share information on entrepreneurship. And I think every other day we're going to get someone asking us, oh, is this halal or haram? Is this halal or haram? And I want to talk about that for a little bit. I want to actually put a little note here, since we're bringing up this conversation, okay? Because we get so many of these questions, but no, I mean, at least for me, number one, these questions have nothing to do with our expertise, which is business and entrepreneurship. So there are other types of questions. And there are questions that you probably, if you're listening to this and you ever, reached out to us or thought of reaching out to us, you probably don't want our answer, right, on whether something is halal or haram, at least for us at Ummahpreneur, because I am in no way a scholar, or I am in no way, qualified in fiqh or a mufti or anything really that would qualify me to be able to tell, And so you should not be reaching out to me to find out if things are halal or haram. And I won't give you an answer. I don't usually give people an answer because I don't want to get into that and misguide people and take that risk. I might have my personal opinions, and that's my personal opinions. But I think what you said is interesting, which is, you want to teach people how, what the scholars have essentially determined are the factors to look at, so that they can come to their own conclusions, right? And I think that's a really interesting approach, and it's a very powerful approach, because I don't know, there's so many Muslims right now that just, they'll kind of go to anyone to ask, is this halal or haram? And I think, at least for myself, I don't know, you should go to someone more qualified. I mean, am I wrong with that? I don't know. It might just be my perspective, but I feel like, just because we're a Muslim company doesn't mean that we're qualified to tell you what halal or haram is. I think, we should raise that standard on who we listen to when it comes to these things. I just want to know your opinion on that. I mean, I might be way off, but please go ahead.
Yeah, no, I agree with you 100%. I mean, yeah, people, and believe me, the amount of DMs I get on Instagram, is this halal? Is this random cryptocurrency that just came out? Is it halal? And it's like, so first of all, I'm not a scholar, right? And where did this, random crypto come out of? Like, I have no idea about it, right? So it's like, what we need to first understand is that there are scholars out there that have a specialty in Islamic finance, and those are probably the best people to reach out to or gain wisdom from. What I do is I learn from those people, from those scholars. Whether it's I talk with them directly, or I learn from their publications, and I relay that information to the community. That's what I kind of focus on. But I'm not a scholar myself, and if I give an opinion, it's like, this is what I'm comfortable with. So the second thing we need to realize is that, like I said, it shouldn't be looked at as black and white, because and like anything in economics or business, nothing is black and white. And you can probably say this the best, right? There is no black and white about anything. There's a lot of judgment that you have to make in business. So same thing applies to looking at a stock or any business. It's a unique business. It's a unique entity on its own. So you have to look at it and just kind of evaluate, have your own criteria. Are you comfortable investing in it? And there is so much innovation also happening in the finance world, cryptocurrencies, NFTs, just new concepts. Human beings are always developing new ideas. So new businesses are coming out, new stocks are coming out, new IPOs, SPACs and whatnot, new financial instruments. And unfortunately, well, we're getting there, inshallah, but the scholarly community takes time, and rightly so, to look at all of these different things that are happening in the finance world and make a judgment about it. And then on top of that, it keeps developing over time as we understand more, as the scholars as well understand more and consult experts, because the scholars also consult experts to understand what's happening, right? They have to take their Islamic knowledge, the fiqh knowledge, and apply it to the dunya. So it's not an obvious thing. So that's what people need to keep in mind. So in the meantime, we have to use our best judgment as people, and we need to, I think, as a community, try to move away from this black and white thinking of this is halal and this is haram. Rather, we need to be sincere about what we think is truly permissible. And if we have a doubt about something, then it's okay to stay away from it. But I think we need to move away from looking for a free ticket or an answer from somebody that, okay, this is halal, let's go for it. Because I've seen that so much. This cryptocurrency is halal, let's go all in. Or this stock is halal, let's go crazy. Or like another one, I don't know if you've been keeping up with AMC and GameStop. You might have heard about this in the media. Yeah. But people asking me, is GameStop halal? And it's as if they want to get a free ticket to say, okay, this person said it's halal, so let's get in on it. But the problem with AMC and GameStop and these stocks, or how they've been trading, is that it's pretty much borderline gambling. And as a Muslim, does that sit well with you? Or are you just kind of lured in by this and you just want that free pass? Okay, I can invest in this, or I can try this out. Are we looking for free lottery tickets kind of thing? So
I completely agree with that.
We need to move away from.
And I completely agree. I just want to make a note on that, because I think that's an important distinction to make, which is really great that you've touched upon it, which is, are you investing in a stock because you believe in the company and you believe in its potential and growth, or are you investing because you think there's like a pump and dump happening right now and you want to catch the wave, right? Or there's going to be a short squeeze and this is it, like get in on it, and that's the thing. In that case, you're gambling, right? So as well, I think here the intention behind it is also important, because are you investing in GameStop because you believe in GameStop? Are you investing in it because, I can maybe ride this wave, right? And I think depending on the intention, that actually makes a difference. It makes a difference in does that qualify as haram halal? It's an interesting perspective.
Absolutely. Yeah, and it's a very blurred line too, right? Because you can actually find an argument for GameStop if you wanted to. There are arguments for it. There are people out there that are saying GameStop is going to be a good investment because XYZ. They're coming back. They have a new CEO or what have you. But I don't think so. But and again, not an opinion, but or not advice, I should say. But I think this is very important. Personally, I'm very much a believer in long-term investing. I think that's how a lot of the wealth is made. And what I personally like, this is just my own experience, and I don't think long-term investing is necessarily the only way to do it. But I think it's been proven the most sound way. I mean, there are studies out there. For example, Fidelity Investments, they have their own discount brokerage where people open an investment account with them. They did a study on all the investment accounts and their performance. So apparently the investment accounts that traded the most, that did the most frequent trades, buy and sell, performed the worst. The best performing accounts or accounts of dead people, believe it or not, because they just, you know, their stocks haven't moved. I mean, they haven't been touched, right? It's in an estate or something, and it's just kind of growing. Or people, they forgot about it, obviously. So the second one is people who forgot about their investment accounts as well. So those are on average the higher performing accounts. So it just goes to show that if you invest in business and growth, you'll see that over time. And this is what all the investment legends, and you read any investment book, Warren Buffett, Peter Lynch, all these guys, this is what they will tell you. So it's about gaining that knowledge as a community. I think we, you know, it's like, again, the whole halal gambling thing. I think we need to move away from that. It's like either, oh, the stock market is gambling, I'm going to stay away, or the stock market is halal, so let me get in on some quick money action. You know, it's like we want one or the other. I don't know why, but you know, I think the middle ground is, you know, ummatan wasatan. Hopefully we can be that, you know,
definitely
moderate ummah. So that's my thinking. That's the kind of philosophy I want to teach, or I want to, you know, also, you know, just kind of discuss with people and learn from.
I want your opinion on something, and I know this is going to be your opinion, but right now, and this is more for me, to be honest, than for anyone else. So I'm gonna try to squeeze your brain a little bit for this. Right now, where, you know, the market has seen a lot of ups and downs over the years, right? And for people listening to this, I'm sure they're aware of some of the crashes that have happened. Most notably, probably the most recent one was the one I believe was in 2008, right? The one when essentially all the banks went bust. So there was a lot of market crashes that happened recently, and a lot of people have been predicting, I think, for the last 4 or 5 years, maybe even longer, that the market is again nearing a crash, right? And then it was predicted during COVID, and some people said, oh, the crash happened in COVID when the market, you know, was red for a little bit. I don't think it was red enough to be able to be honest, to be qualified as a crash, but maybe. But anyways, what I'm trying to say is a lot of people think a crash is imminent. Like another market crash is coming, right? It's going to be in the red. It's going to be a bloodbath. And for that reason, they've been waiting, right? They've been waiting, and maybe they've been waiting since 2016, since 2017, and, you know, waiting for that crash. People, they've been saying for a while, you know, this is going to happen. It hasn't happened yet. And the truth is, and we know this, I'm sure you know this as well, even better than I do, but like the Feds have been pumping a lot of money into the stock market to keep it green, especially during COVID, to be able to prevent a crash. Now, I want to ask you this. Okay, because we're talking about long-term investing, and I want to give some tangible advice here to people listening. I want your opinion on this. Talking about tangible investing, right now, we're faced with 2 possible situations or outcomes. Of course, there's the possibility of a market crash happening, right? And we don't know. I mean, at least for me, I don't know if that's going to happen. If it's going to happen, then when? Obviously, it's going to be hard to predict, but is it going to happen? So I'd love your opinion on that. Number 2, at the same time, we're also witnessing a lot of innovation, right, within this sector. And you just talked about this, right? We're witnessing cryptocurrency and NFTs. And so if the market crashes, will it recover? And if it does recover, will it go past what it used to be right now? Or will then that be an opportunity for cryptocurrency to take over and other technologies to take over? So it's a lot to take in, right? It's essentially right now a very uncertain, at least in my opinion, a very uncertain playing ground right now in terms of investment. And I'd like your opinion, how you see things going, where you think this market's going to go, where you think cryptocurrency is going to go in general. And is it a good time right now for someone who hasn't invested to get in right now, where, of course, like the market's pretty high and a lot of stocks are at their all-time high right now? Is this still a good time to get in? So I'd love your opinion on that. I know I shot a lot at you right now, but, you know, go ahead.
Yeah, it's a loaded question, but it's okay.
Yeah, it is a big one.
I love addressing this, though. I like addressing this concept, this idea. So I'm going to start off by saying, obviously, nobody can predict the future, not with certainty, right? The second thing that I want to say is the question. It's a very common question, and it comes from like a thinking of, I don't want to lose money. The truth is, a correction can happen, and a correction will happen. And anybody will tell you that. Any investment professional who has been in the industry for decades will tell you that a crash can and will happen eventually. When? We don't know. Personally, what I think is a crash kind of did happen in March 2020. That was a market correction. And it was, and I understand why people think the market is going to crash again really soon, because they think, okay, there's so much money in the economy, and and there's going to be inflation, and they're going to raise interest rates, and that's going to cause a shock in the stock market. But for me, at the end of the day, what I've seen is that markets are very, very resilient. The economies in general are very, very resilient, as long as there's this mentality of growth. And you can say all you want about the U.S. government and the different empires that are out there in the world today, China, U.S., what's going on. But the U.S. is for example, just talking about the U.S., the biggest economy in the world, and they've grown very well, and they're still growing, and they still have a very robust economy, in my opinion, and other economies as well. So right now we're at a point of, we were in a lockdown, and there was a whole bunch of slowdown, and people were laid off, a lot of unemployment, and shops were closed. But now we're going back in the other direction, which is good, where things are starting to recover, and economic indicators are only indicating that things are heading in the right direction. So for me, like those are the ground facts. I don't know how I can use that as a way to justify or conclude that the market is going to crash tomorrow. I can't, personally, especially as a long-term investor. So why I started with saying maybe the potential issue with the question is that there's an issue of, or a concern about losing money, is that you have to think that you will lose money. You have to know that you will at some point lose some money. You're going to get into a loss at one point. But what history has shown, and what probabilities say, is that if you're a long-term investor and you're invested for the long term, you're very, 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 very likely to be profitable in the markets. Very likely. How profitable, I don't know, and depends what you're investing in, and that comes down to your research, etc. But even, let's say you're investing in an index fund like the S&P 500, and let's say the Sharia index, the Sharia S&P 500, that one has done really well over the years, and it will, in my opinion, likely to continue to do well, because it consists of large cap companies who are still profitable, and they're coming out of an economic recovery. And if a crash happens, which it can, let's say it happens in a year from now, and there's a really big crash. First of all, we don't know that that crash will be at a lower point than it is today. So let's say the S&P Sharia ETF, for example, which there is one, let's say it's at $25 today, and in 2 years it reaches $30, and then it crashes to $26. That's a crash, but you're still up, right? And then at that point, usually what happens in a crash is people are panicking. So there's a lot of irrational selling and a lot of unjustified selling. And what an investor should try to do is look at that and say, okay, this is an opportunity to buy more. So in a crash, especially if you're a long-term investor and you're just kind of passively investing for the long term, you take opportunities like crashes and you buy. And you should be less worried about losing money, because in the long run, the probabilities are that you will be profitable. And there are plenty of charts out there. There's a chart that, actually, it's on my blog, and it's about time horizon and risk tolerance. The article that I wrote there about time horizon and risk tolerance. If you scroll down a bit, you'll see a chart that basically shows the probability of being profitable over different time periods. So it goes daily, weekly, monthly, and then 5 years, 10 years, 20 years. The probability of being profitable over a daily time frame is like 50-50, basically. 50-50, you're going to be 50%, you're going to be profitable, 50% you're going to be at a loss. And that makes sense, because you buy a stock today, tomorrow it can fall. And that's happened to me a million times. And you just have to be okay with that. But over 20 years. So, and it goes kind of in order and very much in a very linear scale. Weekly is like 75% you'll be profitable, 25% you'll be at a loss or something like that. And then when you reach 20 years, oh, there you go, my man, 20 years, it's pretty much 100% probability, right? That you're going to be in the positive. And this is over that specific time period between 1926 and 2015 that they observed these returns. So it's just kind of a game of common sense and probabilities that one should think about when it comes to deciding, whether they should invest in the markets today or not. In my opinion, I think a lot more money has been lost waiting for a correction than actually investing today.
Right.
Yeah, I think I answered most of that. Regarding cryptos.
You did. Exactly. What's your opinion on crypto? If you can just share that with me and with the audience, of course.
Yeah. So cryptocurrencies, I think they're definitely a significant development in the financial technology world, and just I think they're going to be pervasive in a lot of different industries because of not just cryptocurrencies, but because of the blockchain technology, right? Right now, it's still very early in the development of cryptocurrencies. There's a lot of potential. I don't know where Bitcoin is going to be in 10 years from now, but I likely think it's strengthening in terms of its reputation, even though there are still a lot of regulatory uncertainties. For example, this is not related to Bitcoin, but directly, but Binance, which is the crypto exchange, has been banned in Ontario actually recently, and in the UK. So there's going to be uncertainties like that kind of, okay, oh, we can't use this app anymore. What do I do with my cryptos? People are going to panic and sell. So there's going to be a lot of ups and downs with crypto, and that really needs to be understood. I talked about it in a video one time.
It's interesting that they banned Binance. Why do you think they did that? I mean, did they share information on why they're banning, an exchange like Binance, which is one of the biggest exchanges, actually?
It is, yeah, and it causes some concern, right? I think that the crypto space has developed a lot, so I think it's here to stay in some way, shape, or form. So I would say, like, look and do your research, see which projects are interesting, which crypto projects you think are going to do well in the future, but. Why they banned them, it's just a regulatory thing. So the main idea behind cryptocurrencies is that they're decentralized and not regulated by any government or central bank, and so they're digital. So there's just a lack of certainty right now as to how they're going to be regulated and framed. And Binance probably has a lot of specific specific regulatory issues or things that relate to its buying and selling and showing of information and how things are exchanged, that the regulatory bodies like the SEC and or that version of in the UK that basically don't yet know how to regulate in a certain way. And what you need to understand about regulators is that they're very they want to have control over how things operate, and they also take their time. And because they take their time while the crypto space is developing, they're going to surprise us from time to time with, okay, actually, so here's our decision about what we think about exchanging this crypto. China recently banned financial institutions from trading cryptocurrencies as well. So governments also have an issue with cryptos. I know it's banned in Turkey. Because they want to have control over the monetary supply and just generally because money is very different than just investments and assets, right? Money is literally how you exchange value. It's the medium of exchange. So if it becomes that there is another medium of exchange outside of the government's control, it's very concerning for governments, and I understand that. So we have to keep that in mind when it comes to cryptos in general.
For sure. I wanna ask you, before we dive into some audience questions as well, inshallah, to see. I know there's a few that came in from our listeners today. I want to ask you, what are some some practical tips that we can give to the Muslims listening to this that they can take to grow their wealth sustainably and in a halal way? Is there any tips that we can give them to our listeners today?
Yeah, definitely. So you guys, so the first thing that I would consider is, first of all, understand your financial situation. Mm-hmm. Understand how much money that you have that is investable. So what I mean by investable is that you can risk it, and you don't mind losing some of it or a big portion of it. And you can pretty much not lock it up, but you can have it in mind to invest for 3 to 5 years at least. So this kind of money, it's not money that you need in the immediate term. So first of all, figure out how much money you need in the immediate term. So emergency expenses, usually 6 to 12 months of, your basic living needs. An amount of that amount is good to have, or is important to have as an emergency savings. So first establish that. Understand how much debt you owe if you have any debts, and then set a plan for paying that off. Ideally, once you've paid that off, then you can start investing. But I don't think there's necessarily one right answer. I think somebody can start slowly investing. So that said, if you have identified that, okay, let's say I have $5,000 or $1,000, whatever the number is, that I don't need today, I don't need in the next 2 years, I don't need in the next maybe 3 years. I want to do something with this money. I don't want it to just sit there. And then think about, okay, what goals do I have, right? Many of us have the obvious goal of, I want to grow my savings so that I have a bigger pot of money in retirement. That's a very common goal. So, okay, let's start with that. Your time horizon right there is at least 15 years plus, depending on your age, of course. So understanding how much money you have to invest, and then go ahead and open a brokerage account. Go ahead and open an investment account. All right. There are many out there like TD Ameritrade. There, if you're in the US, UK, there's a whole bunch. In Canada, there's Questrade. There's CIBC Investors Edge. There's so many that you can choose from. And then what I would do is simply start by getting your feet wet. And I know a lot of people say, oh, you should open a paper account, which is like fake money, basically. I personally don't believe in that. You can if you want to, but I don't think it gets you very far. It's more, in my opinion, for trading, if you want to try certain trading tactics and look at charts and whatnot. But as a long-term investor, I think the important thing is to start and get a feel of how it feels for your money to get invested, move up and down, and understand how that feels. Start with that amount, and then designate a small amount that is feasible for you to consistently contribute into that investment pot over time. And then in terms of what to invest in, if you're a complete beginner, I would start with a halal ETF. For example, you've got the Wahed Invest ETF. The ticker symbol is HLAL, and then you've got the Sharia Portfolio ETF, which is the S&P 500 one that I mentioned earlier. The ticker symbol for that is SPUS. These are common ones that I just put out there. They're diversified. They're basically, ETFs are exchange traded funds. They're a basket of companies, and these are a basket of 200 of the US's top halal Sharia compliant, I should say, companies that qualify under certain Sharia standards. That's a good way to just literally start the journey and let your money get invested. Why it's good to start with an ETF is because it's diversified. What that means is you've got companies, you're spreading out your risk so that you're not investing in just one company. Because when you're investing in just one company, anything can happen to that one company. Any piece of news, if you think about Tesla, Elon Musk does a tweet and then the stock moves, right? So it's a great way to just get yourself invested. ETFs don't move a lot, so it's kind of a warm up into the markets because they have like 200 stocks, so they're not going to naturally move like individual stocks. But then once you're more comfortable, you can start researching individual stocks. And what I use actually for Muslims specifically, if you want to kind of a shortcut for finding Sharia compliant stocks, I'd give a shout out to Zoya. That's an app that it's been quite widely used already by the Muslim community to filter out Sharia compliant companies. You can just basically go search up a company, see if it's Sharia compliant or not. It tells you why. And then you've got Islamically, that's another one. They use another standard that's similar to the one that Zoya used. They also use kind of a similar standard, but there are going to be some differences. You can download Islamically as well, but I think you have to pay for that one to see a little bit more information. Finispia is another one. It's another stock screener. And there's one other one that I recently came across. Oh, Muslim Exchange. That's another one you can check out. And they all kind of have their own. It's the same criteria that I mentioned earlier, but they're with slight differences. But these are great tools to use to find individual stocks. And I would put smaller portions for individual stocks because they're a more concentrated bet when you're investing. And they move a lot more than an ETF would. So from there, you kind of get an idea of how stocks move and start building a portfolio of stocks. Something like, 10 to 15, even 20 stocks is good enough to make your own diversified portfolio and learn about these companies, follow up with them, see how they've performed and their earnings. There's a lot that one can do, but honestly, there are so many different types of risks you can take when investing in stocks. So just understand how a company has performed over the last 5 years, 5 to 10 years, how its stock has performed, and you can kind of get an idea of what you can expect. It doesn't indicate what it's going to do, but you can get an idea of the volatility or how much risk you're putting your money into, and then from there you just get a feel of why stocks move the way they do, and but you need to give them time. All right, that's a very important thing, especially if you believe in the company and you believe in its growth.
Thank you so much for sharing these tips, brother. I think it's definitely a big list that now someone can note down and they can take this in pretty much some masterclass. So shout out to me for bringing you this podcast and to Moez for joining me today and sharing these tips. Really, thank you so much, brother. Jazakallah khair, because this is all about giving value to the listeners and giving them some tangible advice that they can walk away with and benefit themselves in entrepreneurship, business, or even in life in general. And we've definitely done that today. Now, I want to dive into some questions by the audience. We actually have a few that came in, and I'd love to share them with you. I think there's some really good ones here. So one of the questions from the audience that we have from one of our viewers on Facebook is this. Would you recommend a financial investor or a strategic investor when it comes to business? Which one does Moez think is better and for what type of organization? So I think, of course, that's a matter of opinion, but do you have any thoughts on that? Financial versus strategic?
I'm trying to kind of understand the question specifically.
So financial, usually to give people also kind of an idea of what that is. So in business, financial is someone that's going to come in and just put their money into your business without necessarily having an input. And a strategic investor is one that will invest, but will also have a say in decisions in the business. So they'll essentially take part in the strategy and not just with their money as well. So that's the key difference there.
Okay. That makes sense. Yeah. So if you're talking about somebody who's going to be investing in your business, that is going to be definitely a difference of opinion, but definitely a financial investor, it's the benefit of just having somebody giving you a certain amount of money is that they are, they're not gonna have a say necessarily, as much of a say, and you can have a little bit more freedom as to where you want to take the business. Strategic investor obviously is going to want more say. There's pros and cons, obviously. A strategic investor, it depends on what you're looking for. If you're looking for expertise, I would imagine that you probably want a strategic investor because you'd want to shift your business to a certain way. And if you feel that, your business can benefit from that expertise. In the investment world, these guys are sometimes called hedge fund activists or just activist investors, right? They're very involved and they actually try to take over the company in a way, kind of using politics, but that's getting to another extreme. But yeah, I think it really depends on your needs. I don't think I'm the most qualified to comment on that. But if I think it would definitely depend on the situation. I would say if you're looking for somebody's input, probably strategic investor. If you're just looking for cash for your business and you know exactly what you want to do, probably a financial investor.
Mm-hmm. Thank you so much. And I think that's going to benefit people who don't even know the difference, just to kind of understand that notion as well. We got a great question. I think we answered it on the podcast, but I'd love for you to just kind of give maybe a quick recap for this. I know the answer, but I want you to share the answer. So I'd like to ask, what investment philosophy one should have while investing in stocks to make the maximum profit out of it?
Investment philosophy, I would say have a long-term time horizon. That's the best way to make sure that you're more likely to get the maximum profit, if you will. The other thing is to look for companies that or look for investments that you think are going to continue growing, and not just continue growing, but are growing, like accelerating in the pace of growth. So if you see that, a stock or an investment, the underlying company itself is very likely to continue its growth and it has a really good strategy in the market that it's operating in, then it's likely going to continue generating more and more value, taking up more market share, and that's going to expand its stock price. That's generally what happens. But again, this usually needs time. I'm more going to comment on the the long-term investing approach. Some people will tell you if they're traders, in terms of like they like the more short-term approach, or they look at charts and patterns. From what I know, the general wisdom out of that is to set a target price and to set your stop losses. So know exactly how much you're willing to lose and cut your losses, and then also set a target price and take profits, and know what kind of profits you can expect within a certain time frame. So it really depends on the investment approach, but personally, I think long-term investing in solid businesses generates the best long-term returns.
Mm-hmm. At what point in life can you invest? What if someone does not even have decent income yet? So that's one of the questions that we received as well. So if someone doesn't really feel like they have the finances, is it a good idea to invest anyway? What's your opinion on that?
Yeah. So generally speaking, I mean, once you turn 18 and you've got some money to invest, you can open your own account. But if we want to hone in on it, like specifically what's the right thing to do based on your situation, it really depends on, everyone has a very different situation. But I do encourage as much as possible for people to start investing early. So the earlier you start, the better, because time really, really, really makes a difference in terms of compounding returns over time. So even if you have just $100, $25, start investing. I think take it as a percentage of your income, percentage of your wealth, whatever the amount you can afford. That's it's not an absolute need for your living. Try to allocate some towards investing, and you'll see that snowball over time, right? So if it's not a great time right now, inshallah, one day it will be a better time for you to start putting more. But the idea is to get started and get comfortable, and you just want to see the evidence in front of you of it, of that actually materializing. So I think it's important to start, like you say all the time, Abby, when's the best time to start a business? Now, right?
Right now, 100%. It's right now.
Same idea. Right?
100%. I love that, brother. And you even mentioned earlier in the podcast, and I think it falls in the same vein, which is, you want to flex that investing muscle, right? You want to build it up a little bit. You want to get that experience under your belt, get comfortable with it, get comfortable with the losses, the gains, so that when you're investing higher amounts, you're not scared when you see red for a little bit, and you don't panic right away and sell all of your shares. So definitely lots of value to be had here. So jazakallah khair for that, brother. Actually, number one, what's in store for the future of Halal Investor? What can people expect from you moving forward? What are your plans for the rest of the year and maybe even the next few years?
Yeah, inshallah, for now, I plan to put out more content, just to educate people a lot more, and just kind of gauge what people are interested in terms of content, what other content they're interested in. But in terms of long-term plans, inshallah, I hope to provide more of a formal education platform for Muslims to learn how to invest. And this is something, inshallah, that I'm gonna be building out over the next few years, inshallah. So that's kind of the master plan. And but yeah, in the meantime, check out my Instagram. That's where I pretty much do most of the work right now, because it's, I have a thought, I have an idea. I can put it out there, and it's relatively simple, and it gets the point across. And and to that point, for any entrepreneur, we have a lot of tools and resources, and it's literally as simple as you have an idea, you can start right away. There's platforms like Instagram, there's TikTok as well. I'm also on there. There's YouTube. Like, social media is so powerful, and you can do so much with it. You'd be surprised once you start doing something, what will come out. And you don't necessarily need to know exactly what you want to do right now, right? So.
I love it, brother. Well, where can people go? I mean, you've shared so much value today with us on this episode, and I really thank you for that. And I'm sure the people listening as well want to support you and want to thank you for that as well. So where can they go to support you and just, follow you as you go on your journey, inshallah?
Yeah, check out my Instagram. That's mainly where I'm focused right now. TikTok as well. You can follow me there.
Okay. Awesome.
And I've got a link in the link in bio. You guys can check out. I've got some resources there for. I also have a beginner's guide if you guys want to check it out. It's available for purchase, and beautiful. That's pretty much what I've got going on right now.
All right, beautiful. So we'll drop the links in the comments, guys. Make sure to check out the Instagram. It's halal.investor. Or just search Halal Investor on Instagram, and you'll find it, inshallah, as well. If you want to go check out the website and the blog, lots of beneficial content on there, including some of the concepts that we talked about long-term investing and how to invest and grow your investments over time. That's going to be at halalinvestor.net. Okay, so check that out as well when you have some time, if you want to learn more about investing and growing your wealth in a halal and ethical way. Brother Moez, this has been an absolute honor and pleasure, brother. Thank you so much for joining me on this podcast. I really enjoyed it. I learned a lot today, so I'm sure our audience did too. Jazakallah khair. And as well, for all of you guys who are listening, you know the drill, guys. Make sure to subscribe, rate the podcast, and show us your support. Follow us where you need to, whether that's Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, wherever. Just search Ummahpreneur and you'll find us as well. And we'll see you in the next episode. Take care, guys. Assalamu alaikum. Wa iyyakum.
Okay, pleasure.